Okay, so how many times have you heard someone say, you need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
It's like almost a classic, you know?
Yeah, it's like a financial rite of passage, right? But we're going a bit deeper today.
Yeah, beyond just like the basic story.
You've read it, the two dads. So what we're really getting at here is the mindset shift, the rich dad philosophy, and how it applies to you.
What's really interesting to me is how Rich Dad, Poor Dad flips that whole work for money idea.
Subtly.
It's not about like hating jobs.
Right.
It's seeing there's more to it than that. Trading time for money, it has limits. The book really pushes you to think about how do you build things, assets that bring in money, whether you're working at your job or not.
It's like that example they give with John and Mark both making good money, but John spends it, Mark puts it into like index funds, a rental property.
Right, right.
Years later, John's still stuck. Mark has all these income streams. Makes you think, huh?
And that's where this focus on financial literacy comes in, strong in the book.
Yeah.
Rich Dad is saying traditional education often misses this huge piece.
Big time.
Not just how to work for money, but how to make money work for you.
Why wasn't this stuff required learning? Honestly,
Right.
balancing a checkbook seems way more useful than like remembering the Pythagorean theorem, as an adult.
Yeah.
But okay, one of the things that really got me thinking in the book was this good debt idea. It's like, isn't debt bad?
It sounds kind of backwards, right?
Totally.
It goes against everything we're usually told. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad is saying debt can be a tool when you use it strategically
Oh, okay.
to get things that'll make you money. Assets, like we were talking about.
So not all debt is bad. It's about being smart. What's an example of that? How good debt actually works?
Let's say someone takes out a loan to buy like a multifamily building.
Okay.
Yeah, there's debt, but that building brings in rent. If that rent pays the loan and gives you profit,
Oh, I see.
that's a debt working for you.
Smart.
Building an asset, but of course there's always risk. The book talks about that too.
So it's about calculated risks, not just like jumping into anything. But
Exactly.
this whole idea of using debt to build wealth flips the script for sure.
It does.
Makes you wonder how many people are held back because they're just scared of debt.
It's about looking at those deep down beliefs we have about money, the ones that could be holding us back. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is really pushing you to shift your perspective.
Okay, so we've talked work for money versus money working for you, the lack of like real financial education most of us get,
Mm-hmm.
and this good debt idea. What's next in the rich dad world?
Let's get to one of the core ideas, the difference between assets and liabilities.
This is like the foundation.
This is huge. It's the whole heart of Rich Dad thinking.
All right, hit us with it. What is an asset versus a liability? Lay it on us.
Okay, so the book says an asset puts money in your pocket. Liability takes it out. Simple way to think of it, asset is like a little worker bee bringing you honey, right?
I like that.
Honey is money. And a liability, that's a hungry bear always wanting more honey.
I get it. That's a good one.
So stocks that pay dividends, that's an asset, putting money in.
Okay.
But a car, payments, insurance, gas, all taking money away.
Liability for sure.
And now, here's the tricky part.
Uh-huh.
Your house, the one you live in. Asset or liability?
Ooh, good question. It's worth something, but if I'm not renting it out,
Right.
it costs me money, the mortgage, all that.
So by that Rich Dad definition.
It's a liability. Whoa.
Exactly. The book shakes things up here. We're told homes are our biggest asset, but if it's not making you money,
It's a cost.
technically, yeah.
Mind blown. I think a lot of people need to rethink this, myself included. It really shows how important it is to get this asset versus liability thing right.
It impacts everything financially.
Big time.
And that's why Rich Dad, Poor Dad hammers this point home. Build up those assets first.
Got it.
The more they're working for you, the less you depend on your job for income.
Which leads us to another big rich dad idea, right? Building your empire, they call it.
Right.
What does that even mean? Do we all got to be Elon Musk now?
Not exactly, but their stories do show the point.
Okay.
They didn't just have one income source.
Right.
They built businesses, invested, created this whole web of things making money.
So it's about having more control, not being stuck relying just on that paycheck.
Exactly. Options, more control over your future. And that's for everyone, no matter how much you make now.
I like that.
Could be starting a side hustle, putting money in the stock market, even just getting that one rental property. Think beyond the job.
So for everyone listening, what's your side hustle, your investment, or even just a skill you could be learning that'll be valuable later on? Don't underestimate the small steps.
And don't let fear hold you back either. We'll talk more about that next time, but
Because fear of losing money is real. We all have that voice. What if it goes wrong?
it's totally understandable. But even the best investors, they've lost money too. Rich Dad, Poor Dad doesn't say ignore the fear. It says see it, know where it's coming from, But then, this is the key.
Like that feel the fear and do it anyway
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, though.
Takes practice, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And remember, Rich Dad is all about calculated risk, not just being reckless.
Right, so research, due diligence, understanding what you're getting into, that's got to come first.
Absolutely.
But you can't let fear stop you from even getting started.
Right. And even with research, sometimes things don't work out. Those are lessons, too. It's part of the process.
It's like leveling up in a video game, right? You hit some obstacles, but you gain experience, you get better at it.
I like that.
And the whole rich dad idea is all about constantly learning. It's not just about money. It's that mindset of always learning new things, gaining new skills.
You got it.
So it's bigger than just like reading a finance book or taking a class. It's being curious about the world, wanting to understand more.
Exactly. And the more you learn, the more opportunities open up financially and in other parts of your life.
So what are you curious about? What skill have you always wanted to learn? What knowledge are you missing? Because even that learning process, it's an investment in itself.
It is.
Now, we've got to come back to this because it's one of the things people get most tripped up on with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The whole, your house isn't really an asset thing.
It's a big one.
Because for most people, buying a house, that's like the big financial goal, we're raised to think it's our most valuable thing.
It's deep-rooted, yeah. And that's why this part can be tough to wrap your head around. But remember, that Rich Dad definition of an asset, it's super specific, something that puts money in your pocket.
Right, right.
So if your house is costing you money every month, is it really an asset in that sense?
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing it now. It's not that homeownership is bad.
Right.
It's about being honest about what it costs and if it fits with your goals.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad makes us really think about those money decisions we make, not just go with what everyone says.
So it's not never buy a house, it's know the costs and make sure it's right for your plan.
Exactly.
Maybe renting and putting that money into investments works better from you.
And if your goal is building wealth, Rich Dad might say, look at rental properties instead.
Right.
Or even starting a business, things that generate income.
Let's be real, though. There's more to life than just numbers. Owning a home, it has that emotional side too, right? Stability, being part of a community. That matters.
Oh, totally. The book doesn't ignore that. It's about finding the balance between the financial side and the emotional side, making choices that feel good in both ways.
So not denying yourself things that make you happy, it's being smart about how you get there within your overall plan.
Exactly. And those are the decisions that lead to a life that's truly fulfilling, where your finances support your goals, not hold you back.
Now, before we move on, got to bring back that working to learn idea instead of just working for a paycheck. That one really stuck with me.
It's a powerful one.
So how do we actually do that? Give us some examples.
Imagine you're in a job. It's not your dream job, right? Maybe it's not even your field, but it pays the bills. Instead of just going through the motions, ask yourself, what am I learning here that I could use somewhere else?
So even if it's not the ideal situation, you're still getting something out of it.
Totally. Maybe you're learning to manage people, deal with tough clients, use a new software program. Those are skills you take with you to the next thing,
I see, I see.
even if it's a totally different job.
So being proactive, seeing every experience as a chance to build your skills, not waiting for the perfect thing to come along.
Right. And Rich Dad's Poor Dad highlights the importance of transferable skills, things that apply in lots of different areas. Sales, negotiation, leadership. These help you build wealth, even if you're not in a traditional business setting.
So everyone listening, think about your own career right now. What skills have you already built? What have you learned, even from those jobs that weren't perfect?
Because remember, you are your most valuable asset. Investing in yourself, learning, and growing, that's the best investment you can make.
So true. We've covered so much in this first part. Understanding assets and liabilities, embracing smart risks, working to learn.
There's a lot to unpack, for sure.
But there's more to come. Join us for part 2 of our Rich Dad Deep Dive, where we'll go even deeper into these principles and how you can apply them in your own life. See you next time. Welcome back to our deep dive on the Rich Dad mindset. You know, last time we really shook things up.
We did.
Like remembering that whole thing about a house being a liability, not an asset, according to Rich Dad, at least.
It really makes you think twice about those old money rules we've all heard.
Right? It's all about taking control, being financially literate.
And remember that question we asked you, which Rich Dad principle could you actually use right now to make a difference in your finances?
Well, today we're taking that a step further.
Yeah,
Because knowing something is only good if you actually do something with it, right?
for sure.
So as we keep going here, think about how you could take action on these ideas.
Even if it's just baby steps at first.
Exactly.
And speaking of taking action, you know what gets in a lot of people's way?
Oh, I know this one. Fear.
Fear, yeah.
Fear of messing up, losing money. It can be paralyzing,
It can be, and it's completely natural.
like that little voice. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I invest in the wrong thing?
We've all been there.
It's totally normal.
But Rich Dad, Poor Dad doesn't say to pretend that fear isn't there.
Right.
It says acknowledge it, see it for what it is, but then this is the important part, take action anyway.
Like feel the fear and do it anyway, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes that's harder than it sounds, though.
It does take practice, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And remember, Rich Dad is all about calculated risks.
Right, not just being reckless.
So research, doing your homework, really understanding what you're getting into, that all comes first.
Right, but you can't just let fear keep you from ever starting.
Exactly. And even with all the research in the world, sometimes things don't go the way you planned.
It
But
happens.
those are valuable lessons, too.
You learn from it.
It's all part of the process.
It's like leveling up in a video game, you know?
Oh, I like
You can
games.
hit some roadblocks, but you gain experience and your strategy gets better.
Great analogy. And that Rich Dad philosophy, it's all about that constant learning. It's
Yeah.
not just about the money itself. It's about cultivating this mindset of always wanting to learn more, to grow.
So it's bigger than just reading a book about finances or taking a class, right?
Right. It's about being curious about the world, about wanting to understand how things work.
So for everyone listening, what are you curious about?
Yeah. What's a skill you've been wanting to learn? What knowledge are you missing that you could be filling in?
Because that process of learning, that's an investment in itself.
It really is.
Now we got to circle back to one of the most, I guess you could say, controversial parts of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Here we go.
That whole idea that your house isn't necessarily an asset.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Because for most people, buying a house, that's like the major financial goal.
It is.
It's like ingrained in us, right? This is the biggest, most valuable thing you'll ever own.
We're caught that from a young age, and that's exactly why this idea can be so hard to accept.
Right.
But remember, that Rich Dad definition of an asset is very specific. It's something that puts money in your pocket.
Right.
Right? So if your house is costing you money every month, mortgage payments, property taxes, all of that,
Then is it really an asset by that
that's a
definition?
question to ask yourself.
Okay, I get it. It's not that homeownership is a bad thing.
Right.
It's about being honest about the financial side of it
Being realistic about the costs.
and making sure it really fits with your goals.
That's what Rich Dad, Poor Dad is all about. It challenges us to think for ourselves, to question those traditional ideas about money.
So it's not never buy a house. It's be aware of what it really costs and make sure it's the right move for your financial plan.
Exactly.
Because maybe renting and putting that money towards investments makes more sense for your situation.
And if building wealth is your goal, Rich Dad might say focus on things like rental properties instead.
Oh,
Or investing in a business, things that actively generate income.
makes sense, but we got to acknowledge the other side of this too, right?
Yeah,
Because there's more to life than just the numbers.
absolutely.
Owning a home, there's that emotional value, that sense of stability, being part of a community.
It's a big part of the American dream, for sure.
Those things matter too.
They do. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't saying to ignore those feelings.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance between the financial side and the emotional side.
So you can make choices that feel good in both ways.
And make sure your finances are working for you, not against you.
Well said.
That's how you create a life that's truly fulfilling, where your finances are supporting your goals, not holding you back.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to bring back that idea of working to learn
Oh, yeah.
instead of just working for a paycheck. It really resonated with me.
It's a powerful mindset shift.
So what does that actually look like in real life? Give us some examples.
Okay, imagine you're in a job that's not your dream job.
Okay?
Maybe it's not even in your field,
Happens to a lot of people.
but it's paying the bills, so you're doing it.
Right.
Instead of just going through the motions, ask yourself, what am I learning here that I could use somewhere else?
So even if it's not the ideal situation, you're still gaining something valuable from it.
Exactly. Maybe you're learning how to manage a team, or how to deal with difficult clients, or you're mastering a new software program.
Oh, okay.
Those are all skills that you can take with you to your next opportunity, even if it's in a totally different field.
So it's about being proactive,
Yes.
not just waiting for the perfect job to magically appear, but taking every experience as a chance to build your skill set.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad really emphasizes the importance of those transferable skills, the ones that you can apply in lots of different areas of life.
Like what?
Things like sales, negotiation, leadership. Those are skills that can help you build wealth, even if you're not in a traditional business setting.
So everyone listening, take a minute to think about your own career path.
Yeah,
What skills have you already developed? What have you learned, even from those jobs that maybe weren't a perfect fit?
because remember, you are your most valuable asset.
You are.
Investing in yourself, learning and growing, that's the best investment you can make.
All right, welcome back for the final part of our Rich Dad Deep Dive. It's been a lot, huh?
We've covered a lot of ground.
Really dug into those rich dad, poor dad ideas, from challenging that whole house as an asset thing
Right.
to embracing those calculated risks, remember?
And most importantly, actually putting this knowledge to work.
Exactly, because what's the point of knowing it if you don't use it?
So remember that question we've been asking all along? Which rich dad lesson could make the biggest difference for your finances right now? Let's take it a step further.
Ooh, okay, I like this.
What's one small thing you could do this week
Oh, this is good.
to actually put that lesson into
I
practice?
like it.
It doesn't have to be this huge life change. Could be something as simple as finally reading that investing book you've been meaning to get to.
Oh, yeah, we all have one of those.
Or maybe you sign up for a financial literacy workshop.
There's some great ones out there.
Or even just having a real conversation about money with your partner or a close friend.
I think a lot of people are afraid to even do that.
Sometimes just starting that conversation is a huge step.
It can be, for sure.
The point is, just start somewhere, even if it's tiny.
Because once you get that ball rolling,
Right.
it's amazing how much momentum you can build.
And remember, progress over perfection.
So true.
Don't get stuck trying to do everything perfectly right out of the gate.
Right.
It's a journey. There will be bumps along the way.
We all make mistakes.
That's how we learn.
The important thing is to be open to those learning experiences and not let them discourage you.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about one of those big rich dad, poor dad ideas. Financial freedom.
Okay, love this.
What does that actually mean to you?
What does it look like? Is it like early retirement, traveling the world, or just having enough that you can do what you love without stressing about bills?
It's different for everyone.
It is.
For some people, it's about having options.
Right.
It's about control over your time and your resources, being able to create a life that truly reflects your values.
Love that.
And it's not just about having a ton of money.
No, it's more than that.
It's about having the knowledge and the skills to manage your money well
Okay.
so that it's working for you, not the other way around.
That's where all these rich dad principles come in.
Right.
Building that strong financial base, investing wisely, creating those multiple income streams.
It's about building a system that supports your goals.
It is. So everyone listening, think about this. Where are you on that path to financial freedom?
Yeah, what are your goals?
What steps can you take, even small ones, to move closer to them? And remember, it's never too early
Or too late.
to start taking control of your financial future. Now, before we wrap up, I think it's important to remember this.
What's that?
Rich dad, poor dad. It's just one perspective.
It is.
There's no magic formula that works for everyone.
Be critical, ask questions, and figure out how to adapt the rich dad ideas to fit your own situation.
It's your journey, right? And most importantly, never stop learning, never stop growing.
And keep striving for that financial future you deserve.
Because as Rich Dad teaches us, the best investment you could make
Is in yourself.
Well, that's it for our Rich Dad Deep Dive,
We hope this has given you some things to think about.
and maybe even inspired you to take some action towards your own financial goals.
Remember, that path to financial freedom starts with a single step.
What will yours be?